Now, an Indiana judge has ruled that a ban on students using their IDs in elections is unconstitutional under the First and 14th Amendments. And this argument, it should give us all pause because we're likely to see it again in other cases involving election integrity. Now, this judge is probably aware that you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote in federal elections. And for him to suggest that it is unconstitutional to make people prove that they're citizens to vote in federal elections, it's a bunch of cockamamie malarkey, to borrow a Bidenism. And so, one of the things that we have to look forward to is the case potentially winding up in a court of appeals and there being a legal battle over this. I think it's a good test case, if you ask me.
5:02, and a federal judge is now making it a whole lot easier for students to go cast their ballot and to vote here in Indiana.
So here's what happened. His ruling essentially means a student ID is enough to cast a ballot. So you might remember state lawmakers last year voted to change the ID requirements, and that led to lawsuits and this new ruling.
Ella Rhodes joins us now live in studio to explain a little bit more about what this ruling means and lifting this ban for our young voters.
Yes, so the judge's decision essentially protects around 40,000 student voters, according to the court's decision. Now, when those students show up to the polls, they can use their valid student ID as identification.
At the polls, students can now show their public university IDs as voter identification, the same as how military ID, Native American tribe IDs, and passports work too. Before Tuesday, that wasn't the case for students in Indiana.
Why are they being singled out for a change in the law, but not some of these other groups? And that's where the judge looks at that equal protection argument.
Last summer, a law that banned students from using their student ID as voter identification went into effect. One IU student, along with two other organizations, sued the state in May 2025, saying the law was an unconstitutional burden. A federal judge agreed on Tuesday. He found the law violates the First and 14th Amendments.
The state has provided no evidence that these IDs are being used to commit voter fraud or are posing an actual security risk. And so then that raises the specter of it becoming a voter suppression initiative rather than a security initiative.
Josh Montag, the student in the lawsuit, voted Wednesday with his student ID. He told 13 News, "I have voted in Indiana 3 times using my student ID because I don't have an Indiana driver's license or other qualifying ID. Senate Bill 10 singles out students like me. Students are not a threat to election integrity." Marion County Clerk Kate Sweeney Bell held a meeting with poll workers Wednesday morning to let them know they can now accept student IDs again.
We are toward the bottom of the pack when it comes to voter turnout.
But the students there, they can use their IDs to vote in elections. I think it's a little bit crazy, if you ask me. And where's the election integrity? Where is the concern over valid votes in our elections? Again, you have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to be a resident of the state, right? You have to be over 18, and in some states not a felon. So there are a number of things to check off the list to have a valid vote in U.S. elections, and not having to prove those things is quite frankly insane. And 176 nations on Earth, of course, they have voter IDs, and that's for a good reason. They've eliminated mail-in ballots in a lot of these countries because they know it is prone to fraud, or at the very least vulnerable. And 30 states now, they are refusing to turn over their voter rolls to the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice to check to see if there are illegal aliens on those rolls. We know that there are illegal aliens on the rolls, and they have voted in elections. Look no further than Pennsylvania, and their voter rolls there, they do not pass muster. They are quite dirty and flawed, and there are a number of other states just like it. California, of course, being a cesspool of horrible voter practices, and of course they are trying to push through the worst possible election standards that you could possibly have, or no standards as they would have it, because they keep arguing that you have a right to convenience in our elections. That's just nonsense. It's absurd on its face. You don't have a right to convenience in the elections to cast a vote. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You should have to prove that you have the right to vote in U.S. elections. This is the most common sense thing that I could possibly argue about it. And that's why it's an 80-20 issue. But for some reason, the GOP Majority Leader, John Thune, refuses to get on board with this 80-20 issue and pass the Save America Act by either having a talking filibuster or nuking the zombie filibuster. I mean, all things should be on the table to eliminate illegal voting in our elections. We need to make sure that American citizens are not getting disenfranchised, that their votes count. One citizen, one vote. And this is the rallying cry of election integrity reformers across the country. We're watching you and all of your shady behavior and suspect voting on this issue about why you refuse to put into place sensible election integrity standards. Well, it just makes us suspect that the entire thing is rigged. And that's going to be a working assumption until we're proven otherwise. And that's because elections are not the sort of thing where you have the benefit of the doubt. That's not how it works. The way it works is it has to be transparent, it has to be legitimate, and it has to be verifiable. Independently, by the way, not just by whoever runs a private voting machine company. So, weigh in with your thoughts about this story. Why are we tolerating these rogue judges with these insane rulings? Why can't we just get basic election standards like you see in the great majority of countries in the world? Is it because the Democratic Party and their uniparty cohorts, they want to see our elections flawed and up for dispute and for us to have a lack of confidence in our elections? I mean, they're not proving that argument wrong, are they? And I want to see them prove it wrong, and that would be by supporting the Save America Act.
And Indiana's voter laws have been at the center of national debate for years.
In fact, Indiana's voter ID law made it to the U.S. Supreme Court back in 2008. And since then, a lot of states have introduced and some have passed voter ID bills. 23 states now require photo IDs. Another 12 ask for an ID, but don't require it to be a photo ID. Now, supporters of voter ID bills have long argued that they cut down on voter fraud by requiring identification.
Opponents say there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud before the voter ID laws. They say they exist to discourage voting from groups like college students who traditionally vote for Democrats.